ask as well if you would like to contribute to our conversation or opener on this one. So remember on last class, you said, what do these words mean to you? When someone says, calm down, or don't get mad, or those things that are kind of like, triggers, but, and they incite emotions, but it's not one that is like global. So another person that you don't know that well can tell you to calm down. You can roll your eyes and be like, you don't boss me, you don't tell me what to do. But then if someone that is a good friend tells you to calm down, you're like, you would do me like that? You're supposed to be comforting me? Alrighty, so let's get without using any expletives or curse words. So we're trying not to use any curse words if we can possibly avoid it. And of course, nothing that is dehumanizing. So anything that's an ist, so nothing that's racist, ableist, ageist, even, which is a thing. What is a word or a phrase that needs to be retired? So something that is just bothersome to you. I have a face-to-face class that meets on Mondays at Spring Branch campus. And I asked students what a word is that they just dislike the word. It doesn't carry anything inherently bad about it. They just dislike it. And the word that they voted that they disliked was moist. Have you ever heard that people don't like that word, moist? I didn't know that it was like a bigger deal. Okay, you feel like you know it? Vieira, do you know people don't like that word? Okay, I guess I had heard it before, but it just wasn't like an immense thing. But they all, like, in consensus, they were like, that word should die a horrible, bloody death, and no one should ever say it again. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was that big of a deal. All right, so let's put in the chat and see how y'all feel about it. Which word or phrase is overused, unnecessary? You just don't like it. And if you can think of something else to put in place of it, what should be a good synonym we should use instead? I asked the students, I said, so if I'm making the master chocolate cake of all chocolate cakes with like sour cream in it and, all sorts of cool stuff to just make it as fluffy and as angel-like as possible, and you don't like the word moist, then what other word should we use for it? And they came up with like all of these synonyms. And then people disliked those synonyms too. We'll say, just call it creamy. They're like, oh, okay. Just call it like, smooth and battery. They're like, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot going on just to describe one little cake. So is there anything, or do y'all like all words? Or even a word surrounding you? My mom, her name is Pamela, and she gets really annoyed when someone Pams her that doesn't know her. So if someone says, hi, Pam, she's like, excuse me, grown woman, my name is Pamela. But then everybody, like in our whole family, she's Auntie Pam. And everyone that's close to us calls her Pam, but not, people that are outsiders. You're not supposed to use that word. So think about like maybe even your own name. Maybe Jacob doesn't want to be Jaked, or Emily doesn't want to be Emmed. I don't have a name that you can separate into a nickname. So I'm always envious of people that can be like Lily. You can double it or, take it away. Oh, I know Sarahs are sensitive about that H. So if somebody H's you as a Sarah, or you have feelings about that, you're like, just read. It's right there on the screen. Don't put the H there. Or if you're a Sarah with the H and you leave it off, then it's Plex. It's a problem. So y'all don't have any words this morning? We don't feel like doing it? No problem. Anything that bugs you? A word? Taxes? Test? Okay, those are words that are rough on me. Police? Let me try to think of something that makes you straighten up, do something different. All right, it looks like our icebreaker isn't breaking any type of ice this morning, and that's totally fine. Okay, so Lee, tell us all about it. Okay, so I'm old. So is that a real word or an acronym? Because I still don't understand how ASL equals as hell, but it's just I'm an old. So let me know what's happening. Or do y'all know what that means? GOF? That's not go off, is it? Ethan does know either. Alrighty, y'all. Lee might be typing, telling us what time it is and what's going on, which is great and fantastic. So I just want, we will conclude this in a minute because, like I said, y'all aren't breaking any ice. I'm fighting for my life out here, and I don't want you to put y'all through it anymore. All right, so we're gonna move on to the content, and I just want to holler at your activity schedule really quickly to mention that you're going to have your quiz that is going to be on self and identity on this coming Thursday. So we really belabored that chapter. We talked a whole lot about it. So I don't think we need to go through an entire recap because there is a handout and whatnot. But we do just want to pop by the knowledge of identity and self. Remember, we discussed all of yourselves, including self concept, self esteem, your self image. We defined oh yeah. Okay. So that we don't want to say that one anymore. Okay. So in the chat, Lee has expanded for us a little bit. Yeah. So you don't want to say that anymore. That makes sense. We can think towards our quiz of all of the different selves that we want to make sure that we memorize: self-concept, what you believe about you; self-esteem, your attitudes toward what you believe about you; and then your perceived self or self-image, kind of the package that you think that you're presenting to people. That's a combination of what is true about you and then how you're carrying what you feel about you. Meaning, we gave the example of being tall. If you are excited about being tall, it always makes me laugh when like elders will compliment a child on growing as if the child had anything to do with it. It's like, oh, look, you got so tall. And it's like, I've been trying, eating my vegetables and whatnot. Like, okay, that's genetics. You didn't do any push-ups and become taller, but we're congratulating you. So think about, you are tall, but how are you wearing your tallness? Are you flexing it? Are you coming out in high heels and you're, doing all of this stuff to let people know that you're extendo and tall? Or are you kind of making yourself smaller? It's a source of shame, or it's something that's not cool. Emily, you have just put into the chat like one of the more inflammatory things that someone could ever say to another person, and that one definitely should be dead. Okay, so the concept of go back to your country, it's like, all right, so do you have me on plane tickets? And not Spirit, not flying Spirit. Okay, so go ahead and I will just go right on back, get another stamp on this passport. And since I don't know where back is, then I'm just gonna have to just take the world tour.
I mean, it wasn't that bad. It was just bad when the pandemic started. So when I go outside and people assume all Asians is Chinese for some reason, which I found that like even you're Chinese, you're not, people are not supposed to tell your like to your face certain things like that. And people things like we have some sort of responsibility toward the pandemic. We're not. I mean, we here in America when the pandemic hit. I wasn't in China or Vietnam or whatever that country might be, and that I felt that it's very offensive. I mean, starting from 2020 already. Sometimes you get that, and you get some like hate words like you did this to our country. I did what? And then I mean, certain people they just really mean, and that phrase is I don't I just don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like to hear it. I'm so sorry that you had that experience, or, and any of our community members had that experience, because it's rude and it's inaccurate and then it's just overplayed. It's played out. Just, okay, go back to your country. Sure, fine. All right, now what? What about this interaction? Something made you say that we're having an immediate issue right here, and you sound really, really dumb when you say something like that. So I'm so sorry that bigotry is up and through. And I hope that it calms down. And then I wish there was like a different type of assault to commit that wouldn't get you jail time. So like not like a real gun or a baseball bat, but something like Nerf balls, like foam, and you could just, like snap somebody back into their life and be like, hey, wake up, clap at them, clap and do something. Alrighty, other phrases or words that need to be retired, because that one's rough. And that definitely is an indicator it doesn't feel great. Others, questions or comments or contributions. All right, thank you for sharing that experience with us. It's identity based, and that's what we're talking about in the recap to make sure that we're prepared for our quiz on this week, on this coming Thursday. To make sure we look at all those selves, make sure we have our definitions of attitudes, beliefs, and values, and also think a little bit about the profile that we were building, where we had on one side the orientation of persons that are more individualistic, more denotative communicators, the concept of concrete use of words and phrases, and then on the other side, more coded connotative language users, more collectivist, thinking of things that are more situationally based and abstract. Also, the self fulfilling prophecy will concern you. Remember, we said that a prophecy is a prediction, and then a person, that is you or another person, can put forth an expectation. We can start behaving in a way that supports that expectation taking place. It does. And then we feel validated, or the person who put it forth feels correct and valid that they predicted this thing, that whether they realize it or not, they've not just predicted it, but they've actually set the wheels in motion for this thing to happen. Questions or comments about what to review for your quiz that's coming up on Thursday? Anyone have anything? All right, good job and thank you. And then on last class, we talked about verbal communication. And remember, we have a handout in the file section, that same old worn out handout. That's dead today. Okay, we're done today with the handout concerning verbal communication. So today will be the last day that we will holler at that one. And we want to look at the concepts of verbal communication concerning how we define what verbality is. And remember, we separated it out from vocalized communication and nonverbal communication as well. So we want to think about verbal communication as anything that can be enunciated or pronounced. So when I see your names that are in letter form in front of me, those symbols formulate words, words formulate a language. We need both of those things together. Think about a word even that is printed using the same alphabetic characters in more than one language, and it means one thing in one language and something totally different in another language. Same exact words, or excuse me, letters that are smashed together, but even the sounds of enunciating them may be different. The pronunciation expectations and the context will be different about whatever this thing is. So think about the concept of something being verbal if it can possibly be enunciated, and then something is vocal if it is actually enunciated using something to do with your voice, your respiratory system, any sort of mouth mechanics. So even if you kind of sigh, as we mentioned on last class, you utter something by clearing your throat, but you're not technically saying words, then that would be a vocalization or an utterance, but it's only verbal if we can kind of pronounce it. If you have been reading books for a minute, then maybe you have seen onomatopoeic sounds or enter sounds where someone has put in a book a thing that you're supposed to experience in an auditory way and tried to give alphabetic characters to it or words to it. So you'll see in a book, UH dash HUH. And so that person is trying to work out a phonetic spelling of something that can be a vocalized utterance, but is not necessarily an independent word. And then it kind of gets washed into the mainstream as a word, or as a phrase. So if you were to say to someone in a text message, they wouldn't think, oh, this is literary, I'm reading a novel, unless you're like me and you're also long-winded in your text messages. Yes, they're complete sentences and they have periods and commas and sometimes even colons. So we're thinking of belaboring sort of the rules of the language. And in some places, those things are suspended. So if something is vocalized, it means that it can be pronounced and is pronounced. If it's verbal, then it just can be pronounced, whether it's vocalized or not. And if it's nonverbal, which we'll move into today in chapter 5, then it doesn't necessarily need to have a vocalization in order to exist. And also the different interpretations of what this symbol means are so vast that it's difficult for us to point to a finite understanding. We gave the example of putting one's hand back and forth, that if we were to do this, then it would be important for us to know what time of day it was. Is this the first time you're meeting this person? Is the person trying to indicate that they want your attention? Are they greeting you? So we need all the stuff that is highly contextual around this hand going back and forth. Whereas if we were just to say what we wanted to intimate in a vocalized verbal way, then we would say good morning or hello. And so you'll notice sometimes we'll have nonverbal communication and vocalized communication layered. So someone will say, hi, how are you doing? Where is it? Oh, it's over there. What time does it start? I don't know. All right. And so you said, I don't know. And you supported it nonverbally to kind of redouble your efforts for understanding, for the people to understand what it is that's going on. Also in the handout for chapter 4 and in chapter 4, we learned some terminology, or we reiterate some terminology that we likely got in 4th grade and 7th grade and some other places where we learned the different parts of speech. We know that when people say sometimes, oh, I'm really interested in grammar and I cannot stand bad grammar and I'm always correcting grammar, some of the things that they are correcting are not always grammar, because grammar does indeed talk about the rules of a language, or the rules that go into the symbolism of language. But grammar really discusses to us how we put together words and phrases as far as pieces that must exist, or elements of language. For example, grammar takes things such as the past tense, the present tense, and the future tense. It takes a subject and a predicate, that we have to have verbs in certain orders. Those types of things are grammar. So rules what this thing has to have in order to truly be a sentence. And then the other things that people are likely itchy about and want to be corrective of others aren't necessarily grammar, but their own types of language rule sort of genres. So we also learn the term syntax, and syntax discusses in sentences where they go should as Yoda. So syntax talks about the actual physical positionality of language. So think about, if we start off, maybe you've heard of the difference between an active voice or a passive voice. So the difference between saying I spilled my juice and the juice was spilled. In syntax, we would center, or we would lead off with a thing that is most important, such as the juice spilled. If we were, excuse me, if we're using it passively. If it were active, then we would structure the syntax of the sentence to center accountability and that I did something. So the most important part of the sentence, or the headline, would be I did something that requires an action, versus something happened on the planet and yeah, maybe it was me that, caused that something that happened. So think about those phrases that itch you or that make you feel a certain way, such as that non-apology apology. Have you ever heard someone say, I'm sorry you feel that way? Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Or they try to kill a spider, end up burning down your house, and say, I'm so sorry that happened. That happened? You happened. Okay, you happened all over my house. And how'd you find my flamethrower? It was in a whole different room. So think about the concept of trying to avoid accountability, or trying to point to a particular thing that you want to be the highlight or the headline of a sentence, and that would be your syntax. So how you order your words, that sort of ordination to put things together. And then one of the most, kind of nerdy, to me, attractive and unusual fields is the concept of a professional semantician. Someone that's interested in the flavor of semantics talks about word meaning. And we've only been talking about meaning in class since the very first day. Meaning is what we're hoping to exchange in communication, just as I've said plenty of times and you have understood and also have offered your own commentary toward. When you put your hands back and forth this way to another person, you don't really care if they see the palm of your hand or not. You're not interested in them experiencing that motion, but you're interested in them experiencing the meaning that's inside of you, that you'd like to acknowledge them, and that you are being in good faith, and you are going with a cultural convention that we should acknowledge people that we know. And we know that that's regional, that's cultural, it's also situational. So think about, and has it ever happened to you? And maybe don't tell us because you don't want to put anybody's business out there. But have you ever seen someone in a place where it is unpleasant, or that person probably doesn't want to be recognized, or in a state that they wouldn't want to be remembered? And so you did them kind of a level of respect and did not speak to them. So you were like, uh-oh, I know she's not supposed to be here, so I'm not gonna, look over or say anything. Or you didn't feel it was appropriate. It was a place like a library or a spiritual center, or somewhere where everyone's supposed to be quiet. So instead of you yelling from the back of the room, hey, I see you, hi, how are you? You just kind of give the eyebrow head nod. Okay, that's it. So think about it. And then some people just pass you by like they've never seen you ever in, their whole lives. And you're like, are you serious? And my oldest likes that meme. It's like, oh, you thought I was rude that I didn't speak to you. I just didn't have my glasses on. I'm seeing the world pixelated. Okay, I just didn't know it was you because I didn't have my glasses on or wasn't paying good attention. So think about the concept of putting together the cultural convention of knowing when to say hello, how to say hello, if we should say hello, all the situation around it, and that your intention or your meaning is what you're trying to exchange and create for other people, and not really the symbol or the information itself. So it's not the wave or the hello or the head nod. You don't care if somebody gets a head nod today. You care if they get the meaning from you, that they're being acknowledged. And so when we look at the field of semantics, we start talking about what those words mean to other people. So think about a phrase such as, okay, and I'm gonna put this one in the chat too because y'all don't want to talk to me about words and phrases that you don't like, or a couple of you did, and I appreciate it. All right, but let's see if this one ignites a little bit of dimension. I'm putting in the chat. Okay, what does it mean if someone says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you? So, okay, we use the word love twice, and we already talked about abstract language that we're talking about big, humongous fields. And we even use love as one of those examples that there's so many different types of love, right? So, when someone says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, we need not only those words that are there flat, and I put them in the chat on purpose because, and I didn't put like an asterisk around anything or italicize it. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. So if we see that in a text message or we see that written out on a board, we're just like, mm-hmm. But if someone says it out loud to us, if someone says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Oh, okay. That's crazy. I don't know which way we're going. Okay. I don't know which. So when you said, you didn't say you love me as one of the creator's children, you just said you love me with the eye of entrapment, and you put your, you put your lashes a certain way. So what am I supposed to think about that? So think about a person who wants to hear the sentence a certain way. Okay, so if you're looking for this person to possibly ever be in love with you or to love you in a way that is satisfactory to being in some sort of partnership, then does that sound like a hopeful message or a sad message? Or could that person interpret it as there is hope? Or does that seem hopeless? What do you think about that phrase? I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Is it even okay to say, or is it causing more confusion than it clears up? Or y'all talk about it?
It depends on the situation. Is it a long-term relationship or is it just started? It really depends. Like my mood depends on how far into the connection relationship that I received this phase. If it was too long in the relationship and people already invest a lot of time and effort, then I'm ready to throw a brick in this phase, in this person phase. But if it just gets started, then I don't really like mine because, well, thank you for telling me ahead of time so I know where your heart stands, and I know if I should withdraw my, efforts and time or caring for you and stuff like that. So it depends. For me, it depends on the timeline.
It's situational. It definitely depends. And Tony
Yeah.
says it kind of sounds sad. Okay.
It
And
sounds
if that's
sad.
the type of the relationship that you wanted, if you wanted a romantic interest relationship with this person, but understand that some actors, when we say actor, we mean a speech act. So you'll hear me use that one. Apologies if it's confusing. We'll use communicator. So some communicators will hear that and will feel a message of hope. We'll be like, okay, well, love is the foundation. That's the basis. As long as we love each other, then maybe you'll grow into that limerence, is what it's called, that infatuation based love, that maybe it will turn into a romantic situation. And then some people will hear that, just as Emily said, depending on where we are in the relationship, as an absolute stop sign. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Okay, cool. Well, let's move on then, because I'm not here to, play around. I'm trying to find a partner. And if you don't love me by now, you're probably not gonna, be in love with me in that way. And then Emily, you mentioned something while you were giving your elaboration, that's similar. That reminds me. Think about saying that you love someone. Okay, there are different levels. That's what we're saying, Lee. They're all different types of love. So if we're talking about in love, we usually read that semantically as infatuative love. Love you like a brother, yes. And so, Ethan, that's what I was mentioning. You didn't frame it by saying, I love you as a human in the world, but I'm not in love with you as a romantic interest. So you didn't explain, you didn't, this imaginary person didn't go into that. Just use the phrase flat, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Think about getting up the courage to tell someone that you love them, and you say, I love you. And that person says, thank you back. Like, oh, what is this? And I know Emily was throwing Nerf bricks. We were talking about, so if anybody's watching this recording later, we're not advocating violence. Just, paper bricks. All right, it is. Okay, so Tony says it's a contradiction. And that's what we're talking about. When the first part and the second part don't match up correctly, it's what we call ontological violence. That's what my research is about, and it's crazy making. You've likely heard of the term gaslighting before. So when you make someone feel as if it is their interpretation or their view of something that is toxic and wrong, when the first communicator actually has induced this type of behavior by the vagueness of their language or their personal behaviors or activities. When you say I love you and someone says thank you, they are not giving clearly an indication of whether they love you or not back. And it's not that they owe you that. You would want to hear that as the first communicator, but it's not that they owe you to say that. You can ask if you like, but the question is kind of already answered, right? Or they would have said it back to you when you said it back to them. So if you say I love you and that person says thank you, there's only a couple of things that are happening. Either the feds are listening and that person doesn't want to get you caught up in whatever that case is, or the person is not prepared to say that word back to you and really kind of what is evocative or what is carried with that. All right, so I thought that when you got a boyfriend when I was a kid, that meant he was supposed to carry your books for you at school and buy you a chicken basket in the lunchroom and then fight all of the bullies for you, or like the word boyfriend just carried with it like such a gigantic set of responsibilities. And I was like, you want a boyfriend? Well, essentially, I want a bodyguard and someone to fund, again, this chicken basket. That's what a boyfriend is supposed to do. And so then some people didn't want to be boyfriends because they didn't have to do these things. Think about the words that go along with, think about your best friend. Okay, anyone here have a best friend? And think about how people try to avoid that terminology. And I'll hear, and who do you think avoids the terminology best friend more often? People that present and live as men or people that present and live as women? Okay, who has the least amount of best friends, men or women? What do y'all think? Or is it, can we even divide it up like that, or is it equal? Okay, men. Ethan's got it. Hope's got it. So I had a student, men, and why is this? And the men are probably sitting here like, why, how did we get in this? I have friends. Okay, you probably have friends too. But have you heard that person that tries to slice it into other types of relationships? Like Lee mentioned, there's different types of love. Yep. Okay, Yin knows. It's probably men. And so they'll do friendships the same way. They'll be like, well, that's an acquaintance. That's kind of like a work friend, which is different than a friend. Or that is, just we went to school together, we were classmates. One young lady in class was talking about her best friend who had stood up at her quince, who was in her wedding, who was godmother to her child, and they were roommates during college. She was like, that's my best friend. And the guy sitting next to her was like, how do you know that's your best friend though? Because I got this guy that I've been knowing. He was my next door neighbor. Our families lived together. Our mothers were pregnant at the same time. Our first birthday party was together. And yeah, I stood up at his wedding too. And we lived in college. We got matching tattoos, and then we joined the military together. And we own a boat and we take it out every Sunday. And I was like, that's not your best friend? That's my friend. We went to school together. That's your best friend. Okay, that's okay. It's all right. That's your best friend. So think about titles that we put on things and what semantics tells us about those. So meaning, if you say this word, the world is going to change. If you say lawyer, there's supposed to be a wedge. Communication's supposed to stop. They're supposed to stop talking to you. We're supposed to do something different. Sure sounds like a best friend to me. It's giving best friend, even if it's not a best friend. And so we're thinking about semantics and how we choose words that suit us for varied reasons and situations. Remember, we said that we're making a profile, and part of the profile is a contrast between language that is denotative versus more coded or connotative. That we have more of an individualistic perspective versus a collectivist perspective. And then I just introduced recently the difference between a more passive voice or an active voice, when you are having accountability, I language, personability versus trying to just say that the universe conspired for this thing to happen. Let us do a test really quickly, and knowing that we're talking about language, so I'm not tricking you with this one, you just tell me what you would say. Let's say, and this isn't, I'll use a different time because I don't want y'all to think I'm talking about you in particular, because I'm not. All right, give me 1 second. Okay, and any typos are not God's work; they're mine. I apologize. So we have typos because again, I only type with two fingers. Class is supposed to begin at 8 o'clock. You have arrived at 8:16, and I picked 8:16 because for some reason the world has adopted the stance that as long as you are there in the first 15 minutes and you're still Gucci, and that's okay. So let's just see what's happening. So 8:16, you arrive to class. Using language and not the language of numeration, not saying I arrived at class at 8:16. How would you characterize what time you arrived at class? So when someone says, "Oh, you went to class today?" Uh-huh. And you would say, "Oh, well, it went smoothly, everything went okay," and you want to describe to them the concept of you getting there, not at 8 o'clock. Which words would you use? Would you say I was late? Tardy? Okay, so I was tardy. Okay, let's see. Emily shaved that 1 minute off of there. It was like I was 15 minutes, not 16, because that's outrageous. Okay, but I was 15 minutes late. Okay, that's what happened. Slightly late. Okay, late. So you would say you're late. I was late to class. Now, what's the difference between tardy and late? Is tardy okay? Or tardy is a school word, correct? Okay, so when do you ever really hear the term tardy outside of, I mean, I guess don't be tardy for the party, but if you're old enough. But let's think about like you barely ever was like, oh, my train was tardy this morning. You know, you probably wouldn't say there the bus was tardy. So late or slightly late, so it makes sense. You're proving it. You're doing it. So when you're talking about school and you say tardy, that makes sense because that's a school-based word. If we what if the professor locked the door so you couldn't get in there? You ever had that high school teacher that was awful? That if you're even 2 minutes behind, think about people that say I'm running behind. I was there after the bell. I was there just a little bit late. Okay, yeah, they were rough in high school. Like it's like you only have 3 minutes to fight for your life to get to where you have to go, and then someone has the nerve to lock the door on you. So think about how you feel about being late. So the difference between you actually being late, if you were 16, not 15, messing with you, if you were 16 minutes behind time that you're supposed to be there, why don't we want to just say straight out that we were late? Yeah, I was late to class today. Yeah, but class is a whole, think about what we're measuring contextually. So yeah, I was 16 minutes late, but class is an hour and 20 minutes anyways, and she don't be talking about nothing for the first 20 minutes, really. And then there was someone later than myself. Doesn't it feel so good when you're late and then somebody walks in later than you? You're like, all right. So I'm not the only one with issues on this day. So it makes you feel embarrassed, is what Lee said. And embarrassed to whom, even? You don't even just want to lock it in your own schema. So think about a person who's like, I'm never late. Well, you're late today, but not ever. And so what you're really doing is using the African American vernacular English parable of the habitual bee. So when someone says, and understand that people are really itchy about bee, when I just did it on purpose and I said, she don't be talking about nothing. All right, so we had a negative and a habitual being there. She don't be talking about nothing for the first 20 minutes. We mean that she is not speaking about anything significant. When you say I'm never late, what you're really saying is that I never be late. Okay, I'm like usually, habitually, I'm not late, even though I am late on this particular day, denotatively. That's not a part of my character. So it's as if we imagine that we have this permanent record and we don't want anything to be installed into that record that doesn't feel like it's fair for it to be there. You were late this morning, and would you say, yeah, but it's 2 minutes after the bell, and I had to get off the bus, and they make you go get the breakfast anyways, and I had to get in here. Yeah, but you were late. I understand that, but I'm 12. I can't drive. My mother put me on the bus at a different time. Yes, but you were late. So now you don't get to go to the pizza party. It's like, dang, that's awful. And so we get in our brains that being late is like a really, really bad thing. Or maybe we're from a culture that has a unique version of time where tardiness is not a big deal. I came, right? I'm in class. I'm here. I'm here now. Why are we worried about exactly what time it was? So think about other things that we want to lock into our schema, our official record a little bit differently. So we don't want to call ourselves late. We'll say we're tardy or we're running behind. My mom is making two starring appearances in this lecture. I will ask her, I'll say, hey, where are you? She's supposed to be on her way to me. Where are you? And she'll say, I'm on my way. Are you? Is that the TV? Did you have screens in the car now? Because it sounds like the TV. Yeah, I'm on my way. What does on my way mean? It could mean I'm about to get in the shower. It could mean that I'm totally done and I'm in the driveway. It could mean that I'm 3 minutes from you. It could mean that I'm 30 minutes from you. And so then I ask her again, I say, okay, so where are you? Are you driving? Yes. Where? I'm on 45. Are you? You could be in Dallas. You could be in Galveston. I don't know where. I need more information than that. So when people are trying to be passive and abstract and vague, we have to think about what we're protecting. So what are we protecting? If we want to just tell somebody that we're on our way, or we don't want to like drop the location or be precise on what it is, then we're protecting either our privacy or that we're wanting not to be judged for where we are in the space, that we are being critiqued because we should have left sooner or later, or we're trying to protect something with language. So think about in our verbal communication chapter what we're trying to protect with those types of words. We have constructs such as fictive kin. And when we talk about fictive kin, think about people that you call auntie or uncle, for instance, that aren't your biological aunties or uncles. Yeah, you're covering up. It's reputation management or face saving. So you give an honorific or respect to someone that's of a certain age, or you call this person brother or friend. Or if we don't want to call them our best friend, what are we protecting by calling this person an associate? So if this person betrays us, then it doesn't hurt as bad because that wasn't my real friend. That was just, someone I know from work. And then I don't have the responsibilities to this person because it's not like we were best friends. So if this person gets stuck on the side of the road, I could say, man, thoughts and prayers. I'll call AAA for you, but I don't have to actually get out of my bed and go get them because, again, they're not really my best friend. When someone tells you they're from Dallas, as I mentioned, instead of Arlington, what are you protecting? You're making certain that someone doesn't say, oh, I don't know where that country bumpkin town is. I've never heard of that before. Like, ew. So you're trying to stave off an experience that is unpleasant in communication. And so some of us want to just have only problems and start trouble and use language in ways that is inflammatory purposefully and hurtful to others. They want to be controversial. They want to trigger people, use hate speech, including hate words. And there are others that are really trying to do our best to induce community, to say things that'll bring more people into it, and to avoid those sort of phrases that you mentioned in the chat are contradictory, or what we call counterfeit. When someone says, I don't mean to be in your business, but what's about to happen? What just happened with Tony is what's about to happen. I don't know if y'all saw on the camera. He just arrived, just jumped up. When someone says, I don't mean to be in your business, they're about to parachute directly into your business. Actually, they're already reporting live from your business because they're already there. And now they're just announcing how they got there. So yeah, they're about to get in your business. That is true. As soon as someone says, I don't mean to be in your business, but I really am not trying to be offensive, but I don't usually do this, but. So that but negates everything in the first part of the sentence and converts it to a whole different feeling. So now we have that framing that we're supposed to brace ourselves. We have that the person has tried to make what we call disclaimer communication to erase the impact. I don't want to be hurtful, but I just have to say it. Or I'm the type of person that I have to come off the cuff. I'm always real. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And what you're really doing is just coding whatever it is that you're going to say in some attempt at protection, but it doesn't really protect the other person from feeling their feelings. It is supposed to be one of those, well, I told you so. I told you that I was going to behave this way. I had a little cousin, and he was little. He had to be like not even 2 yet. And this was back in the days of the dinosaurs when some of the baby bottles are made of glass. Okay, so a glass baby bottle is what and you're thinking about a glass that you drink out of. It is just that weight, just the same size. And my little cousin was awful, and he used to throw his bottle. Okay, so he would throw it. My mom would say, don't do that. You're going to hurt somebody. That's awful. And instead of just taking it away from him, she would say, so apologize to your cousin. Say that you're sorry. And he would say sorry. And then he would throw it again and see the reaction. And everybody would rally around. And then he would say sorry again. And he was plenty sorry, to the point that he started to get conditioned to say sorry before he threw the bottle. So he would say sorry, and then he'd launch it at your face, because all he knew was that when this action takes place, this word is supposed to accompany it, that you're supposed to be sorry when this thing is happening. Think about how many times people don't seem to know how to communicate to you the thing that you need to feel safe in language or communication. For example, what does excuse me mean? That phrase, when you say excuse me, what type of situations are we in? We know the most obvious. Maybe there's some sort of, thing that's being expelled from your body from some dimension that you're going to excuse yourself for producing. But then let's think about if we are in a line somewhere or in a public space. When you say excuse me, oh, hey, it's another student. Okay, when you say excuse me, are you giving us a request, or is it more of a demand? Are you asking for something when you say excuse me? Are you insisting? Or is that situational as well? So let's say that you need to pass by someone. When you say excuse me, are you telling them I'm coming through? Or are you asking them if you can come through? That one's situational as well. So does it depend on the other communicator? Does it depend on if they're legitimately in the space they're supposed to be, or if you feel like they're blocking the space, or they should know better not to take up that much space? So it's kind of like you're evaluating it as soon as you see it. Now, some people think excuse me is I'm already on the move and I'm just letting you know that I've performed this function, just like the sorry after you've thrown something. So I'm going to, shoulder check you. I'm going to run right through your face, but I said excuse me. Okay, so you can't say that I didn't say excuse me because I did. You can't say I didn't say I was sorry. You didn't say you were sorry. You said you were sorry that I felt that way. You didn't say that you're sorry that you did something. The person's like, well, Hakuna Matata. Huh? Things happen. What? I sure hate that we went through this. And the person will never say, I did it. I am sorry. It is me. Because we don't want that locked into our schema of the offenses that, that we have ever completed or that we have done. Questions or comments about anything concerning semantics or the meaning, or y'all have any stories or questions, issues where language you have tried to say one thing and someone took it just completely, totally the different way that you wanted it to be taken, or the opposite, that you didn't understand what was going on and somebody you believe that their intention was good maybe, but it just didn't come out like that. Because that's what we want to learn from our verbal communication chapter. That's kind of what we call the subtext. It's not expressly related in the chapter so much, but I want you as smart scholars to understand is that there is a difference between intention and impact. And which one is more important to you? Is it more important than someone intended to do the right thing, but it hurt you, so the impact was negative? Or is it more important that the impact was negative, and so it really doesn't matter what that person's intention was? What do y'all have? Any thoughts about that concept, or any words or phrases that have gotten us into a miscommunication?
Excuse me is sometimes used to tell people to repeat themselves, but not because that you didn't hear it. You just want to hear it differently.
Got it. All
It's
right.
like,
So excuse me, I didn't catch that. I said your face makes me want to jump off a cliff. Okay, I got it. I got it. All right. So it's my face, and you want to. Okay. Okay. I got it. Okay, that makes sense. I got that thing. All right, others, questions or comments? Anyone have anything communication based, like a word or a phrase, just the meaning kind of got us? Like, think of like what we talked about before about later. When someone says, okay, I'll talk to you about it later. And then one interpretation of later is 3 minutes. And then the other person, if it's a right now situation, if it benefits us to consider it a right now situation, we want later to be right now. But if we want later to be one day in our life, then we're not going to come back to it. Yep, definitely. So politicians definitely do those things. They'll use buzzwords and phrases to try to spread around accountability. I like when that thing happens. It's like, yeah, you signed a document that's going to lose, 5,000 people their jobs, and the person says back, you know what? It's difficult that we're going through this as a community, and that that choice was made, but we're going to persevere because this is America and this is what we do. And it's like we have all these we's now, and only one person signed this document. It's you. You just did it everybody's Christmas, and now it's we're going to deal with this thing. So think about how we flex that accountability as well. Questions or comments about anything we discussed so far in verbal communication? Thoughts and prayers. That's what we have for all the people. That's what I say. So someone will say, "Oh, and it's a crazy thing. So I mean, I was gonna go, but I don't have anyone to babysit my 7 kids." I'm like, man, that's rough. All right, well, I'll send you a postcard. 7 postcards. Okay, I'll see y'all later. Take care. Good luck. Alrighty, y'all. We're gonna transition really quickly. We're still thinking about our profile of kind of speakers, and we added to it context, which is all we've really been talking about concerning semantics, about what you wanted it to say, and then the situation that you all mentioned that make it feel like it's something different, make it more inflammatory, take it down a little bit. I want to give you a couple seconds to transition, and I'm going to do something weird. I don't usually have to do anything, but apologies. I'm going to stop the feed for just one, or stop the camera just for 1 second, because I want to move into a different space here. And I know my face is going to look ridiculous as I pull up this other document. But please do look in the file section with me right now and get to your Chapter 5 handouts. It will say Chapter 5, Nonverbal Communication. All right, so pull that one up. We're moving to Chapter 5. Give me about 30 seconds, not even. All right, thank you for your patience. So we look at our handout, or do we have any questions or comments? Are we okay? Alrighty, so we look at our Chapter 5, Nonverbal Messages handout. We're looking at some things that nonverbal communication can do first. And we had already discussed that if it's nonverbal, it doesn't require a message that is vocalized, but we have one type of nonverbal communication, which is not as an exception really, but is exceptional in its premise. I'm going to share the screen really quickly. And we see in our handout, as mentioned, we start off really with what nonverbal messaging or nonverbal communication can do. But we want to jump to the key term at the top that just defines nonverbal communication. And it talks to us about not only behaviors, but attributes. And when we say attributes, think about, as we've been mentioning earlier, like what tallness or shortness indicates to others, meaning that they will project on you types of activities that you likely belong to or that you have the ability to complete. Objects such as religious pendants or certain colors that people wear, anything that's not words that can be read, meaning coded or inferred by others, and meaning to be projected onto those things socially. That's kind of confusing, even if it's written for you in a certain way. What it really means is kind of all that other stuff besides the actual words that someone is saying. So think about if someone says, well, I'm really a shy person. And that person says to you, well, I'm really a shy person. And they're wearing hot pink sequins tuxedo pants with an orange bikini top and a mohawk. And that person is standing at 7 feet tall, 320 pounds, is a part of the circus, and is holding 2 firecrackers. Well, I'm pretty shy. Really? Because it kind of looks like you're out here balling out of control. So you said this thing to me, but the way you're presenting, or the way that I, in my culture and my sociality, are ascribing or attributing the characteristics of the type of person that would wear hot pink sequins and have a mohawk, is not saying that this person is likely going to be shy. So think about if we have a common nonverbal indicator, which we will learn later on, that is called kinesics. All right, so kinesics discusses with us the concept of bodily movement. All right, so how it is that our posture exists, what we do with our hands, the concept of nodding our heads or whatnot, all of those things that are bodily movements or that we call in the vernacular body language are called kinesics. One common study in kinesics for years and years and years, when I say years, I mean 100 years, is the concept of folding one's arms. Okay, so I'm performing it now, but I'm short, so I'm gonna try to get up here. All right, so someone that is folding his, her, or their arms. What are all those things that it could mean if someone is folding their arms? Could this person be cold? Yes. Or could be bored? Yep. Or could be standoffish? Maybe. Closed off or guarded? Uh-huh. Comfortable? Could be. Bra strap broken, trying to hold it together. Happened to me in real life. Getting ready to do a pit check, make sure Everything is okay under there? Did I remember my deodorant? It could be a host of things that the person could not even have any conscious thought that they're doing this thing with their arms, or someone can be performative in it and be pouting on purpose. Have you ever seen any person outside of like a 90s family movie actually cross their arms over and say, okay, just defeated? Okay, like I've never seen that in the wild before. I've never seen anyone actually protest by crossing their arms and stamping them down. But that's supposedly a thing that it can mean is insolence as well, that you are being purposefully obtuse, or that you're wanting to frustrate someone or perform, kind of a pout with your arms. And so when we are evaluating nonverbal communication behaviors, think about those people, that are empowered to judge whether this thing is inflammatory, whether it's controversial, whether the way that you're standing, sitting, crossing your arms is aggressive or not. And think about how subjective, as we've discussed before, subjectivity is opinion. So think about how subjective it is for someone to decide, oh, that kid over there is being rude. He's not paying any attention. Just, his arms are crossed, his head is down. And maybe, that baby is tired, or that's just how that person likes to sit. And there's nothing aggressive. There's nothing that's insolent about it. It just happens to be that person's preferred positionality. And so we are kind of getting caught up sometimes in the projection of what people think that our nonverbal communication activities are indicating. And we want to be mindful of that. So some people even tell us, has it happened to you like it's happened to me my whole life? Has anyone ever told you to fix your face? Okay, and we don't mean beat it. We don't mean like, decorate it or do anything, but just your expression that you have in this moment. Or someone to tell you to smile as if you owe the community to be smiling while you're just walking down the hallway. So someone tells you to smile, or someone tells you to fix your face. And I always like that question, especially as an adult. Now I'll ask when someone will say, hey, you're frowning. What's up with you? And I'll be like, oh, my face is paralyzed in a toxic waste accident and it's just stuck like this. Really? No, and it's really not your business what it's doing anyways. Keep moving. Okay, that's it. Keep going. It's not your business what my face is doing. How is what my face is doing bothering you? Maybe for Pam and Greg, maybe from parents, but why is my face from one peer to another bothering your face? What's happening here? So we're thinking about how we present, meaning looking at yourself in the mirror and not really going into it from the self perspective that we learned in our last chapters of, what do I think about me or how do I feel about it? But how will I be read by the universe? How are people going to look at me? What are they going to think? Y'all, okay, so your professor is old now. What, I wasn't born old, some people are born old, but it had to be like a year ago that a little boy on the street, and I say little boy like my kid's age, was like a teenager in high school, said yes ma'am to me, and it was one of the most sincere ma'ams I've ever heard in my life. Like, this person was like, let me be respectful to Sophia from the Golden Girls. Let me make sure that this old elder with this cane and these glasses and this blue wig, let me make sure she knows I'm being respectful right now. I was like, oh wow, it's like it really happened to me. Now you have an English professor that is at Spring Branch that doesn't like the word old, doesn't like to be referred to as ma'am, doesn't like to be referred to as Ms. or Mrs., wants to be called by their first name. I'll say, oh, there's an old machine back there. And she'll say, it's not old, it's vintage. Like, okay, vintage. And I'll say, yeah, and it's I don't know which lady was it. I mean, it was she's an older lady. No, she's not older, she's seasoned. I was like, oh, is she a skillet? Okay, because she's 72. Well, I don't like people to call me ma'am. It kind of makes me feel old. I'm thinking it's kind of the being old that probably makes you feel old. And what are those words going to do about it? But how are you carrying it? And so that's what we're talking about. That's kind of the synthesis between the self that we learned about closer to chapter 3, the words that we use to describe self in verbal communication. And now in nonverbal communication, are you moving and acting and behaving old? Are you responding to this word in a way that shows that it is argumentative or aggressive in your brain? How is it being weaponized, or how is it being, produced in an embrace level way to make you feel better about this? How are you responding bodily to things that are going on in the world? So think about if someone is to come to sit down at your dinner table, are you part of a culture that stands up when people are entering and exiting the table? Do we still shake hands in a pandemic? Are we fist bumping? Is it okay to do the head nod? Can you wink and gun someone in real life? And I have a bad habit of that. I'll tell, one of my kids, like, hey, Pay attention to this thing. They're like, we are not your students. You're always going to be my students. All right. So you're my lifelong students. So think about the concepts of nonverbal communication as in it doesn't have to have words that are uttered around them, but you're thinking the words in your head. They just aren't expressed nonverbally. So when you see super tall person, one of the first words you start thinking, basketball, volleyball, God's favorite. Okay, so this person made you tall. Okay, this is what happens. So you start thinking these thoughts, even though they're not expressed, they're just kind of subtext or they're projected. Questions or comments about kind of what nonverbal communication is or any commentary around it. And we said that one of the exceptions that we'll learn below is paralanguage, which does need a vocalization with it, but not necessarily a word, which puts us in a tricky place, but we'll learn about in a minute. Questions or comments about nonverbal communication so far? Alrighty, so now we move into the functions, and we're looking at things that nonverbal communication does and can continue to do. Firstly, we have the term complement, and that's complement with an E. And that means to us that it's not that we're going to give, good energy or vibes to communication, but instead, nonverbal communication is used to really upend another piece of communication that's either verbal or vocalized. So think about what we discussed earlier when we said that we're redoubling our efforts, and we'll say, where is the light fixture? It's over there. And we're saying it's over there and we're pointing at the same time. Have you been a silly person like me and someone has asked you for directions and you're pointing to where they're supposed to go, even though you're not near the road, or maybe that person can't even see you? You're like, it's just up there. It's by the target. And you just go down by the target, cross over the tracks, do all this. And the person can't follow your hands. Maybe they're not even there, but you're still performing whatever it is. So you can complement it. Back in the day, you would give a kid a phone and they'd start walking around with it. Now you give a kid a phone and they start taking pretend selfies with it, or they know exactly what to do with this thing. So it is an accent cue, something that we're doing that is helping the receiver or the second communicator to further understand what it is that you're saying. All right, so you're complimenting it. You say, I'm really, really upset about this thing. Instead of, I'm really, really upset about this thing. It is bugging me. I'm so angry at you. I cannot believe, oh my gosh, I'm so mad. Okay, so that would be entirely contradictory and opposite. If we were complimenting, then we're trying to behave a certain way to show the intensity of this. Have you ever been on the other side of a call when someone has tried to call out of work by telling the person that's on the other end of the phone that they're sick? They turn into Batman. Oh, hello, how are you doing? I'm all right. How are you feeling? Oh, kind of bad, honestly. I don't know. Just my leg is broken. Really? And the shards came into your voice box and also into your throat, or what's going? You're sick. You're so sick. All right. So that happens sometimes when people are so sick. Then have to make sure that you know it, and so they're complimenting what really could be, an affectation, but doing so in a way that proves its intensity. And then we have repetition. That's a one-to-one, a straight up, double. So when we say redoubling, it means that we're trying to, really show the intensity or the matching between our personal corpus and what it is that we're saying in a vocalized way. When we're repeating, we are doing the same exact thing in a nonverbal communication presence as would be read only one certain way in a vocalized or verbalized setting. And the for instance that we have here is saying yes and saying no. Okay, so just saying yes and saying no with your head and with your mouth at the same time. All right, so it'll say, are you in speech class right now? Yes. Are you in math class right now? No. Okay. Have you already done the head shake activity in this class? Because it seems like we're about to do it now. Okay, if we didn't already do it. Alrighty, I want you to tell me a lie, please. Okay, so someone tell me a lie. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me a lie. But for the first round, I want you to tell me a lie with your voice. Okay, and I want you to tell me the truth with your head. So if I ask you, are you in speech class? I want you to say, no. Okay, so you're going to lie with your voice, and you're going to tell the truth with your head. Are you in speech class? No. Are you in math class? Yes. All right, so you're going to say one thing with your mouth. You're going to tell a lie with your voice. And even if I can't hear you, even if you don't have your audio on, I just want you to mouth it. I want you to try it and see how weird it feels. So tell me a lie with your voice and tell me the truth with your head. All right, here we go. Are you a human? Lie with your voice, tell the truth with your head. Are you human? Okay. Are you a squirrel? Lie with your voice, tell the truth with your head. All right. Is it nighttime right now? You can't do it. Some people are deciding, okay, it is. It feels weird, doesn't it? All right, so now let's try the opposite. Tell the truth with your voice and lie with your head. So if I say, are you in speech class? And you're going to say, yes. Are you in math class? No. Okay, so you're going to tell the truth with your voice and lie with your head. Truth with your voice. Here we go. Are you human? Okay. Are you a squirrel? The truth with your voice. All right. Is it daytime? Okay. Think of the hesitation that you're putting forth. Isn't it weird? And what's so weird about it? Did someone ever tell you? Did you go to, and maybe so, because sometimes international students will have classes that will say, this is a common gesture that you will see. Don't be offended by it. Or this is how, this culture uses their body in a certain way. So we don't want you to be offended or don't want you to, do something that feels like it's weird because it's how people, do. Yeah, it feels like we're on opposite day. We're on inverted controls. We're playing backwards. It is crazy. So if we are doing the yes and no thing that's different, most likely no one sat us down and said, when you want to indicate yes, your head goes up and down. And when you want to say no, your head goes left and right. And if we do this face to face in class, sometimes students get it totally on spin. And I'll be like, are you in speech class? They're like, no. Okay, because I don't, okay, I'm moving things around like thumbs up, thumbs down. I don't know what to do with my face in my life. But it's so intuitive. Like it's one of those things that we have been around so many times that it feels weird, kind of even to separate out what our head is saying and what our mouth is saying. So think about someone who likes to tell lies. Is there anyone that, don't tell me who they are, okay, who likes to actually tell a lie? But if we're going into the concept of lying or lie making, we have to understand that sometimes our face, our body will betray what it is that we're trying to say with our voice. How can you tell someone's lying? We see that non-verbally on television shows that people are like, there's going to be a vein that's going to pop out of your neck, or you're always going to look left, or you're going to do something that's different. And mostly what it is it turns into something that is vocalic, meaning that you're going to add like extra language. All right, so where were you last night? Me? Yeah, where were you last night? Yes, where were you last night? Last night. All right, last night I left work at 5:37. I got into the car. I had to wait 2 lights. Then I was behind a train. After the train went through, I said, let me just stop at the CVS really quick. I stopped at the CVS. The line was really long because the receipt machine was broken. And don't you know those receipts are always hella long anyway? So I had to wait like for the whole roll to get there. And the person's like, I know that you're at Brianna's. Don't try to blame me. Okay, don't try to do that. I know what's going on right now. That's it. Because that person just blah 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 that is not usually talking like that and not usually using that cadence or that level of speech. But think about the hesitation that you just put forth and how hard it was for you to think when I said tell the truth with your mouth and tell a lie with your head. It looked like some of y'all were frozen straight up. You're like, and that's what we had. So it's kind of stiff and stoic. And people are thinking and translating all the time about what it is that they're trying to put forth. So nonverbal communication is extra helpful because one of the caveats or one of the principles that we have of it is a common idiomatic expression. You've heard the expression actions speak louder than words. Okay, and that means to us that we will evaluate and read what someone does over what it is that they say that they're going to do. Okay, so what's the difference when someone says, sure, I'll take you to the airport? If they don't show up to take you to the airport, you're like, you didn't come and take me to the airport. Yeah, but I'm your best friend. So you needed me to be there for you, and I was there for you mentally yesterday. But I needed you to be here for me physically today to take me to the airport. I mean, I wasn't going to be a bad friend and tell you no, but you didn't do the thing I asked you to do. But I told you yes because I love you and you're my best friend. No, that's not how that works. Okay, so you'll say a yes on it when it's a no. The other functions that we have, and do we have any questions or comments or commentary so far? Anyone have anything else? And you got to do that trick with your people too, and see who's like a really good liar that can very smoothly put their head up and down in a yes and say no to you at the same time. Yeah. So it's definitely a red flag to provide what we call lip service, that you say these things are nice and that it's good, and then you don't do the thing that you said that you're going to do. The rest of the functions that we have here that we'll go through quickly and get you out of here. Talk to us about, besides repeating. So if we say, how many of these things do you want? I'll take two, please. Where is the phone? It is on the wall, and we point directly to the wall. That would be repeating. One that I'm giving you the guns for that are nonverbal that I want you to commit to memory for sure, is a regulator. And so when we regulate, we are controlling the flow of communication. Think about when you're speaking to someone and they say, uh huh, and those are vocalized utterances that don't carry any meaning other than the sentiment of I am keeping up or I am listening. Okay, so I'm listening. Think also if you're telling someone to keep going, if they are, speaking slowly or they're kind of hedging and not getting to the point, they're like, well, I really wouldn't bother you, but I did want to come ask, and not because you owe me anything, but you're like, okay, cool, get to it. Okay, so you're telling them, like, tell me what it is that you need. Keep going, keep going. I need to find out what this thing is. Or if you kind of look testy, let's say that you have to get somewhere else. And so if you're looking at your watch or you want to look down at your phone, or you kind of look past them a little bit, or if you tell them they need to wrap it up, so they say, okay, do this. My eyebrows intense. You can see I need to wrap this thing up. So when we're controlling the flow of communication, we're letting the person know, or we're giving them some indicators non-verbally that we are interested, that we are listening, that we have time and space for this conversation, or that we're not. So when we learn that term, that is a type of communication that we'll see at the bottom of the handout that is called paralanguage. Paralanguage talks about the pitch, rate, or tone of your speech. So it is how you enunciate those words and not so much the words themselves. So just as we said, there's a difference between I love you, but I'm not in love with you, and I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Okay. And we're like, okay, so that is a different way to, and to put it out there to be interpreted, even though the words are identical, they're exactly the same. The way that this person has performed them indicates a sentiment or a meaning behind them that's not expressed in the words themselves. And when we do this in regulation, think about if you're talking to someone and they're using like really short phrases with you. You ever have a friend that's upset with you and now it sounds like they are the human resources department? Hello? Hi. Hey, what's up? Nothing much. Are you busy? Nope, not really. What's going on? How can I help you? How can you help me? I'm just calling to see how it went last night. It went just fine. Is there anything else? Oh, okay. So you're taking my order at the Whataburger. That's what we're doing, right? Well, not for everybody at Whataburger, but still. So this person's being really short with you, really terse. It's not the words that they're saying. It's not that they said, okay, can I help you? Is there anything? What can I do? It is how they said it. So they said it in a way that is short and abrupt. Then we have substitution. So let's say that someone says, where is the phone? And instead of you answering vocally whatsoever, you just point to it. What are you doing today? And you just put your head, nope, not doing anything today at all. Nothing's happening going on. Do you want some? And you shake your head, yes. And then we have deception, which is what we just tried to pull off right now with our saying yes, or, indicating the truth with our voices and something different with our heads. So we're trying to create a false impression. Think about giving someone a hug that you really dislike, but you don't want to betray that in front of other people, or you don't want people to know what your feelings are. Think about even how you use your vocal intonation. Someone will say, and I have a present for you. You're like, okay, cool. And then you open it up and it's the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. You're like, this is unique. Look at this. Oh, I can tell you, this is definitely not something I would have purchased for myself, and I cannot wait to find a spot for this in my life. So you're using all the words like kind of around it. You're trying to show that you're appreciative of this thing that maybe you're not appreciative. Or when, let's say that Emily got the ring. Okay, so she's got it. And instead of just telling people like, good morning, that thing is on me, I've got that item. You're like, hi, how's it going? I don't know. It's one of those things like, I was just wondering if maybe, and I don't know, is my camera working? Let me see really. I just want to, let me just adjust it right quick. Let me just see what this thing is doing. Emily, you trying to show us your ring? What? Oh, oh yeah, this. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's like, yeah, I was happy to get it. That's cool. So you're kind of creating a false impression, like you're not trying to flex, but you do want people to pick up on this thing or notice it or what's going on. I thought it was really cute. I saw a baby in the store, and it's one of the best things ever when a baby says hello to you, like in a store, or something. And so the baby came up to me, and I was like, "Hi, little baby," and the baby was like, "Have braids?" Like, you do. Let's see them. Let's go. Hit me with them for a second, okay? So you're letting us know, and that's when you're not being deceptive. You were just saying straight out, I have a piece of nonverbal communication that I want you to deal with. When you're being deceptive, you're trying to act like you're not really, wanting people to know what's going on with it. So we have all of our functions there. Do you have any questions or comments about things that nonverbal communication can do? Alrighty, please do not forget that you have just a quiz. You have your short quiz on this coming Thursday that will center identity and self. And so you'll holler at that handout for chapters 2 through 4, chapter 3 specifically. And on our next class, we'll get into types of nonverbal communication. You're welcome to look at this handout. That one's going to be pretty straightforward. And you'll notice that a lot of our types of nonverbal communication have prefixes that give us some meaning on what to expect. For instance, in kinesics, when you see kine, that means bodily movement. Oculesics talks about eyes, and that means sight or vision. When we have proxemics, that talks about space, just like proximity or approximate distance. And para means to help or an assistive. So paralanguage means with language. Chronemics, that CHRON means time. So we know that we're talking about turn taking, space, and silence in communication. So you're welcome to read through chapter 5, look at this handout, and then we'll lecture it pretty quickly when we come to class on next Tuesday. Do you have any questions or comments? Anyone have anything you want to talk about? All righty, thanks for your patience. I hope you tell yourself some lies in the mirror just so you can see what it looks like